Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Minds, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day. I am Evan Irwin, and we get started as we do with these Top 10s by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Greetings.
Ruben Bressler.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Hey. So how do you guys feel about last week's Top 10? Were you happy with our sort of pilot episode?
Absolutely. Yeah, I loved it. I was very impressed with the editing.
I think it's going to take some getting used to. I think that we're all kind of natural, I think, performers or entertainers, and we all have a little bit of Tinkerbell in us where we react to, you clap for us and we perform magic for you. And so This is a very interesting format for us. We don't really have an audience to feed off of like we do, the Twitch chat or the YouTube chat. It really is just sort of us. And so I think it's going to take a couple episodes to get used to that. But I did enjoy the finished product quite a bit. It was obvious you worked really hard on it. So kudos to you, Evan.
Thanks. And I'm happy with it too, but we're going to make a few changes this go around where the idea is that we don't have to repeat ourselves. We don't have to talk about the same set 2 or 3 times. Some lists will vary wildly, but some of these, like today's, I think you have a point where there's going to be some crossover. However, we're going to get started first with our flavor text segment. This is where you can win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com just by talking to us in the comments down there. You can say hi and tell us what you thought about our lists and what your lists are and some observations that you may have. And Ruben, can you tell us about what our winning comment is for our very first flavor text CoolStuffInc.com gift certificate?
Absolutely. We had a really good comment from a man named Ben Clifford, who wrote, "Notice that Ravnica, Time Spiral, and Lorwyn blocks all got lots of love. These 3 blocks came out back to back. Wizards should examine what made that era so great, because that era was so great." I thought that was just a really interesting, insightful comment about a nice halcyon days of Magic.
They were really cool. I mean, obviously nothing's perfect, but there was definitely a point where, there was some really great tournament Magic. There were really fun cards or really sweet decks when there were so many cards from Time Spiral. Like, people had the ability to really innovate and do different things and play silly stuff like Slivers, and that actually was competitive.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Which was strange. But let's keep moving here. So congratulations to Ben. You talk to us on YouTube. Hit me up on Twitter if you can. That's the easiest way. And we will figure out a way to get that gift certificate to you. Again, if you would like to win your own, talk to us down below after the episode. All right, so first we're going to get started with our honorable mentions. Ruben, 17 was a little much. My third party has informed me that 17 was a lot, and maybe you shouldn't 17 so hard.
My mea culpa. But it can be pretty much summarized with the following. 90% of every final set of every block. It's really difficult to write a part 3, and Magic is no different. And so a lot of my honorable mentions are, your Journey into Nyxes, your Scourges, your Eventides, your Prophecies, basically every third set that you can imagine. So that'll summarize my honorable mention list.
A little bit. So what else is on there?
So I got a couple more on here. From the Vault Lore, I think was a pretty big miss. I enjoy alternate foil copies of Near Death Experience as much as the next guy, but boy, howdy, let me tell you. Plane Chase 2012 didn't really pan out the way Magic wanted it to. It was just another style of gameplay. It was another experiment that Wizards tried. Didn't pan out. When you try to take the World of Warcraft trading card game rating style of gameplay and turn that into a Magic the Gathering game, I don't know. It's just not my favorite. And there's a bunch that we could talk about. You could talk about things like Darksteel, and of course there were sets that were too powerful and ruined Standard for long amounts of time. Things like Mirrodin, Urza's Saga. Even Urza's Legacy, which was on my favorites list. Memory Jar is like the only card that's ever been emergency banned. So there's a whole wide-reaching array of those. And then I wanted to touch on a couple of the dual decks. Sorin versus Tibalt. I didn't realize that was a thing that anyone cared about. Like, that's like a tertiary storyline at best. And then I share the following: Mind versus Might with somebody else.
That's me. You got me, because Mind versus Might was terrible. Jesus Christ!
So
you putting Storm and Walmart Storm at Walmart.
Uninspiring, weird, bad for new players, bad for old players.
It just made no sense.
I don't know. I'm completely fine with spreading Storm to the masses. Just go, my little
There are
pets.
mechanics that you pushed on like the general populace and Storm. Like, it's called the Storm Scale, for God's sake. I mean,
And Dredge is also at the top of it. I would be perfectly happy with them putting Dredge in a dual
Exactly.
deck and
It's
just
just
letting
brand
them.
new players, you're a mad woman.
it is just as dumb as putting friggin' Storm in Walmart, and I can't handle it. And that was definitely on my list as well. So I also have a From the Vault. My From the Vault is Annihilation, which was just total crap. We had like Child of Alara was in it. Virtue's Ruin. Does anyone even know what Virtue's Ruin does? Like,
Nope.
No.
they don't either, and I'm sure there's lots of people out there watching or listening
I'm
who do,
Googling
and that's
it right
great.
now.
It's a silly, ridiculous
Oh, wow.
card that doesn't make a lot of sense, and
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, again, like, all right, we have a few Wrath of Gods or whatever, and most of them are bad, and the set's worth, like, nothing, and there's getting to a point where those From the Vaults are getting a little sketch. Anyway,
Yeah.
so my last honorable mention was this crazy product they did called the Premium Foil Booster. The Premium
was on
Foil
mine.
Booster was the Alara block. Every card in Alara block was in this pack. All of them were foil, and you still got the same, X commons, Y uncommons, and rare, could be mythic, and all of them were foil. But it was every card in Alara block. It was the weirdest, just craziest thing. And the packs were like $15, so they were stupidly crazy expensive. But you had such an incredibly low chance of getting literally anything worth money.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it was so weird, and it's strange. It's like that blew up in their face or something. So that set was just odd. I don't get
That
it.
was a weird one.
That was a strange release of a product. Aaron, what's on your honorable mentions?
So I'm going to start off by saying that I love you both, and I love being on the show.
Wow.
And I wouldn't change that for the world. But my first honorable mention is Alliances.
For worst set ever? Are you serious?
So I was a teenager when Alliances came out, and I remember being very disappointed and very perplexed by a lot of the cards. I feel like the cards that are good are fantastic, and the cards that are bad are really bad. There's a weird like guerrilla tribal theme going on.
Yeah.
We have a red mana dork that makes black, which red with dorks. Like, when you really look at like some of the bad cards, and you look at something like Feast or Famine, where it's like you can pay 4 to destroy a creature or to make a 2/2 zombie.
Feast
like,
or
it's just
Famine
like,
got reprinted in a dual deck. I'll have you know.
and look how
Okay.
well the dual decks did based on your honorable mentions.
Oh,
But
all right.
yeah, I mean, I just feel like it was very, very swingy. There's great, and then there's oh god. And so I didn't really care for a lot of the art either. Like, looking back on it, I didn't think the art was very good. And so Alliances was my first honorable
Wow,
mentions again. Happy to be here.
Seriously. Like, Guerrilla Tactics was amazing. Arcane
That's
Denial. Like, there's so many.
I will not have you badmouth Feldegriff. I will not have that on my show.
But
Oh,
Feldegriff
man.
falls into the great category where, we're not getting into like the cards where it's like, why is this here?
Is there any more Aaron Campbell card than Lake of the Dead? Seriously? It's Lake of the Dead. All right, go ahead.
Fine.
Speaking of the dead, my second honorable mention is Eldritch Moon.
Really?
I feel like Eldritch Moon kind of suffers from the same problem that Battle for Zendikar did, which we will talk about later, in that they missed the reasons why people enjoy the set so much. Innistrad was all about the gothic horror, and I feel like we had that in Shadows over Innistrad, but once the big reveal happened where we knew it was Emrakul and all hell was breaking loose, and everything kind of became Eldrazi-ized, and we were already burned out from Eldrazi going into this, and so and I feel like it became less about the horror, the werewolves, the dead things and things like that, and more about the what kind of crazy Eldrazi thing can we do next. And I really feel like it took away from why we were on Innistrad to begin with. A lot of the cards felt like they were there just for shock value of, oh, look at Bruna and Gisela, look at this callback, look at that. Again, just sort of great in the moment, like the very temporary high of, oh, look how crazy this is. But then, you look at it kind of when the high wears off and you're like, these really aren't very good.
It's
and
basically
so
like, what if everything had tentacles? And you're like,
Right, and that's
just
not
add
why
tentacles.
we wanted to be on Innistrad. We wanted to be back on Innistrad because it was an amazing set and an amazing block, and we just lost a lot of that. There's also the Deus Ex Machina kind of ending of let's put her in the moon, and it's just like really
God, that was so
so that was really poor. The Emrakul itself being in the set ended up getting banned. I just wasn't really excited about it, and I really felt like we lost a lot of why we wanted to be on Innistrad in the first place, to make room for all of the tentacle things. So that's my second honorable mention, and that's all I had.
It seems weird that like Rosewater, he keeps saying like, well, we can't just go back to places. You gotta put a spin, you gotta put a thing. Maybe you should just go back to a place. Maybe we really do just want more Innistrad. Just give me more werewolves, more vampires. It's okay. Give them new mechanics, but don't just add tentacles. Like cheese sauce.
I've visited Israel twice in my life. When I go back for the third time in like 5 years, I don't necessarily want there to just be Emrakul destroying all of the countryside. Sometimes you just want to go back to Paris and see the Eiffel Tower again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're allowed to just go home. Mm-hmm. Not go home, but you're allowed to go home, go back.
But they didn't really want you to. It felt like. Whatever. And this has happened multiple times now, where it's just like, you remember that really cool play? Let's not do anything you liked about it. And I'm like, what are we here for?
To do that. There is a way to do that right. I mean, Invasion was super cool, right? Well, we'd been to Dominaria a billion times, and then Invasion was like, what if the Phyrexians attacked? And that was super cool. So it's possible to do it right. The problem is that Innistrad and Zendikar and Mirrodin were these worlds that we'd only been to once. And we just wanted more of that for a minute before it all got turned to crap.
Well, Dominaria next year.
It's true.
It's going to be a big test.
We'll see whether the Eldrazi invade.
Yeah, we'll see where the moon went, because she's doing a thing.
Oh, no.
All right, so let's officially get started with number 10. Now, I will start off here by saying that my number 10 is higher on somebody else's list. So I will be skipping my number 10. Ruben, are you skipping your number 10?
My number 10 is also higher on someone else's list.
All right. Aaron, do you have a number 10 that is not higher?
I do.
Awesome.
I do. Mine is Kaladesh.
Wow.
Solid.
So Kaladesh didn't really connect with me. What was that?
I said you're coming for it. I like it.
Yeah, just right off the
bat. That's what people are here for. We had the video where we all got along, we all agreed with each other's choices, and now we're here to get messy. So Kaladesh didn't really connect with me because they purposely made Kaladesh a happier set, if you will. They had made several comments about how we were coming off of, 4 really grim kind of sets. There's Battle for Zendikar, the Gatewatch, Eldritch Moon, Shows of Innistrad. They really wanted something to kind of shift the tone. And so we end up going to this beautiful city, lots of colors, lots of, vibrant things, happiness, ingenuity, things like that. And I understand that. I understand the idea of needing a palate cleanser after all of that. But I'm very much a black mage. And so to me, there wasn't enough tension in that set. There wasn't any real drama that I cared about. It felt very kind of after school special of like, Tezzeret's going to ruin the science fair. No. And like, it just didn't, that's not scary to me, and you have the Aetherborn, which I like in theory. I still don't understand why they didn't, kind of, to me, it felt very Ashiok. I'm still bitter that they didn't make Ashiok and Aetherborn somehow. But it just wasn't dark enough for me. I felt like it was too light, if anything. I didn't really, it just didn't connect with me as a player. None of the mechanics really stood out to me. You have the mistake of Smuggler's Copter and the vehicles. I don't really care for Drive. I think Drive is really poorly done. The fact that it's so hard to keep crew. Thank you. The fact that it's so hard to keep people off of it, where you can do something that's summoning sick, but it can still it's just bananas. And so it just didn't connect with me on a number of levels. I didn't really feel like I really cared about any of the characters, and so for me, Kaladesh was a big miss.
I understand when they were like, we're going to go to a shinier place because we just been doomed and gloomed and everything has tentacles on it, and it's weird. But we go to Kaladesh and that's fine. But then they tried to almost. They did a new card type, and it's a new card type. They just can't off the bat. Honestly, I feel for them. They just can't. It's just a thing. Yeah. But, it felt like if you wanted this to be like the happy block, it's okay. Again, just like going back to a place that you've been before, you don't necessarily have to trash the joint every single time.
Right.
Like every time, either he's going to destroy everything, and there's an ether revolt, and everybody has to be kicked from their homes, and everyone's freaking out, and there's a rebellion, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, sometimes maybe it was just cool to actually see the science fair go off and have really cool like machines and things you could use. Like for what it's worth, I didn't really like it that much because I didn't really like the limited part of it very much. There was the whole energy thing, and everything kind of had weird energy stuff going on because it needed energy, but then you'd have enough or you wouldn't have enough, or sometimes you just get overwhelming advantages because you got a ton of energy cards. It was awesome to see a new resource, and I like that, and I appreciate kind of what they were trying to do, but Kaladesh is certainly not going into my like anywhere near my all-time anythings, to be honest.
Yeah, no, it was like splice onto new card types. And also there's the problem of it ruining standard. Remember, we've got Smuggler's Copter, we've got Etherworks Marvel, we've got the honorary banned card of Saheeli Rai.
It's true.
Right? Etherworks Marvel. There's just a whole bunch of problems with the set.
It's really weird. So let's move on here to number 9. And Ruben, I'll let you go ahead and kick off. What is your number 9?
Well, surprisingly, my number 9 is also higher on someone else's list. So
Wow.
I guess we'll pause that one.
Fair enough. Aaron, do you have a number 9 for us?
I do. So my number 9 is Theros.
Theros was not awesome, that's for sure.
So Theros, I think, is the only pre-release that I ever just stormed out of, and not because like I had lost or anything like that. I just didn't enjoy it. It felt very Voltron magic to me. You take one creature, slap a bunch of enchantments on it. The removal didn't line up with it. Like all the removal was really slow for the most part.
Yeah.
Right.
So by the time you could afford to cast it, that creature had been so bulked up that you were never going to kill it. You know, there weren't very many hard destroy effects. It was all like 2 damage minus something. You know, the creatures outpaced the removal at some point, and it felt very hard to deal with these creatures. You know, I felt like the enchantments actually, I felt like they weren't leaned on enough, if anything. I did enjoy Constellation quite a bit in Standard, but I felt like they could have done more with it. I had issues with the storyline. I felt like they did Elsbeth really dirty with the whole, you know, we're going to give you a dude, you know, the dude's going to die, you're going to try to chase the dude, he's going to come back looking for you, but you're going to stay down there. And it was just like, no. And, you know, the way that Heliod did that, the Xenagos plot line of where's the original red-green god? Like, what's going on there? And so between the storyline being really sketchy, them not doing Elsbeth a lot of justice, the awful limited format, and just the Voltron magic, I really could do without Theros.
They definitely returned to what I would describe as battle cruiser magic, you know, and they said it was the first time since Rise of the Eldrazi where they were like, look, we want you to build a monster, and we're not going to have cheap things to deal with them. You're going to be able to put parts on your machine and watch it do things. And
I like that. And the mechanics weren't great. You know, Inspired, I think, was a thing where it was like...
No, that was later.
Devotion.
Was that later? Okay.
Yeah.
Devotion was the big
Devotion, Bestow were the big things that were... And Heroic were the big things in Theros.
Heroic.
Oh,
I mean, I can see why people wouldn't like it. I liked it. I thought it was fine. They also brought back Scry, which was a big deal for me.
Which was nice.
Because I thought Scry was fantastic.
Scrylands
I thought that the flavor of Theros was super cool. I thought that the monstrosity mechanic was a neat way to do the bad guys, because you always have, when you have a movie, there's always that part in the fight scene where the monster like unlocks his secret power in the middle of the fight. Like, that was a cool thing. And then the heroic characters always sort of like built up as the fight went on. I thought that those were super cool. But you're right, there were some weird things going on in Theros that you know, battlecruiser magic isn't for everybody. You're right that the removal was just garbage, on top of the fact that Bestow made the removal even worse if you even had it. So I can understand that.
It was a rough one. However, all right, so let's move on here. My number 9 is 5th edition. 5th edition was ugly as all get out. It was terrible. It basically, that was the set where I think for like copyright reasons or for whatever, like contracts with older artists or something, I'm not sure what's going on, but what they did do was replace every piece of art with something absolutely worse. Like, in every way, on every card, it was just ugly and terrible. It didn't add a lot of things. It was bad value. It was bad art. My killer was, you know, having played back in the day as Old Man Magic, I saw like all these amazing card arts and all of this iconic stuff that you just would never, you'd never want to replace things like Sarah Angel or whatever. And they're like, lol, JKs. And it's just bad. And like just Mishra's Bob, or not Mishra's, Ankh of Mishra was just like this weird windmill looking thing. It was just
in space. Yeah.
It was so upsetting. And there was like a million cards in that set, and they were all worth nothing. And
it's by far the largest Magic expansion ever. Yeah, it had like 500 cards in it.
It had almost 500 cards. It wasn't great. And it was released in March '97, and it just made me sad a lot. And there was some rules changes, which were whatever, but the rules were still crap back then, and no one understood what was going on. Let's keep it moving. 5th edition. It seemed like I love for core sets.
I almost put 4th edition on my worst ever list. Because the only good thing that I can think of that's good about 4th edition is the Korean islands that have the nice deep blue coloring in them, and I used to have a play set of those, and then the rest of the set's garbage. But yeah, a lot of those middle of the road core sets are they just didn't know what they were doing with their lives.
It was painful.
Yeah.
So let's keep moving here. At number 8, Ruben, do you have something you can actually tell us?
I do.
Point? Oh my God!
I do, and it's Betrayers of Kamigawa.
What?
Betrayers of Kamigawa.
What?
Is
I know.
Is a heaping pile of garbage.
Are you?
Evan, I'll hold your earrings. That's fine,
bro.
It is horrifically just it's so bad. I didn't include Saviors because that's a 3rd set. Someone might talk about Saviors later because that set is also garbage, and also Champions is garbage. But Betrayers is super bad.
Oh my God, dude!
Right? It's
Evan's heart is breaking.
It's so atrocious. Like,
why? What are you talking about?
Have you ever cast a card that uses key counters? Have you ever actually done it?
Have
you actually cast a Bale main box?
Look, one of the only GPs I ever actually made hundreds of dollars at was the Champions of Kamigawa Betrayers.
Yeah, that's because 17 people showed up because no one wanted to play this set. This set had a cycle of rare legendary spirits that forced you to sacrifice other creatures that you'd already cast that game, called the Patrons. And none of them were good. None of them did anything. I think one of them tapped to gain you a life every turn.
You know what that set gave us? That set gave us ninjas, sir.
Great.
Ninjas.
Awesome. You know what that set also gave us? Umezawa's Jite.
Right, which is one of the most powerful,
most painful, bad design mistakes, like horrifically bad, like sealed deck experiences. Like, when you went to that pre-release, did you just hope to open Jite and then went home if you didn't?
Well, nobody knew. Nobody had any idea it was any good. But at the pre-release, all of a sudden, everyone was like gathered around the top tables, and it turns out in the top 4 table, the top 4 players, there was an Umezawa Jite on both sides of the table, and this was at the end of the 8-round.
I can understand value. All right, I can appreciate the Genjus because I'm like, all right, that's value. Genju the Spires, that's my guy right there. I can appreciate like Hirobi's Whisper, right? That's buyback coming back for you on that splice onto arcane goodness. Everybody loves a Roar of the Jukai for their card draw advantage engine, right? But it's just so bad, Evan. It's so bad.
I gotta disagree with you now. I do think that there is a non-zero chance we're going to talk about another set in that block, but I would say that Betrayers was not the one to, forgive me, betray the sort of,
I gave myself the rule that I wasn't going to put 3rd sets in the discussion. However, all of the Kamigawas are bad. All of them.
Dude, the legendary dragons
when you meet our new co-host.
When your booster packs have Isao Enlightened Bushi and Opal Eye Konda's Yojimbo as 2 of the card arts.
I want to be Yojimbo, bruh. Can I be Yojimbo?
Bushido's atrocious. Woo. Offering is atrocious. Key counters are atrocious. It's just like...
You know what? Life's hard, but they gave us ninjas. All right, so moving on here. Aaron, what is your number 8?
My number 8 is higher, so I will not be taking part in that discussion.
Wow. Well, there you go. Well, my number 8 is not higher. And my number 8 is the dark. Nothing happened in the dark. Nothing.
Creature.
Zero. It's just, yeah, okay, that's a neat card. It's a cool art. The end. Like, that set is just like a weird, like toilet stain on whatever was going on in early Magic. It was just some random crappy cards. All of them were just weird, and they were dark to be dark, and there's some random storyline where things are going bad, and there's some preachers and goblins, and none of it made any sense. Nobody gave a crap. Very, very few cards worth a crap are in that set anyway. It's just a blip on the radar, and I'm glad it's gone.
I mean, it was really the first set to look at tribal as a thing. So it has a soft spot in my heart. But you're right. I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way to espouse the positivity of the dark.
They just, I mean, like, it's one of those, like, A+ for trying, buddy. Here's your little trying medal, and
yeah, look,
maybe
it's
next
early.
time.
This is
early.
What, 2000 or 1994?
95, I think, or
95?
96,
Sure.
95, I think.
94,
Either way,
And didn't the Dark give us Blood Moon?
he sure
Dark
did.
gave us Blood Moon, gave us Tormod's Crypt, gave us
Look how
Maze
well
of
that turned out.
It was. I
There's some
find
good
it.
stuff in the dark.
I find
Obviously,
it not
it's
great.
not making anybody's top 10, but
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, number 7, Aaron. Do you have a number 7?
I do. So my number 7 is Legends.
Nice.
So you could really sum this up with just one word: Rampage.
sure.
Why?
Yeah.
But I did some digging on Legends. First off, I didn't think the cards are particularly good. None of the, when I think Legends, I really want to be wowed, and there weren't any Legends that really wowed me, quite frankly. I also found out something very interesting. So when Legends came out, I don't know if you knew this, that there were some booster boxes that contained only one portion of the uncommons,
Yeah.
while other sets contained another portion. And so they were called A boxes and B boxes. And Wizards of the Coast had to set up something called the Legends Exchange Program, where you could trade in up to 100 cards from one group of cards for an equal number of cards from the other group. I mean, come on, that's a pretty, silly mistake to make. And so between Rampage, between the Legends I didn't really care about, and between the weird box issues, this is my number 7.
It's got some weird stuff, like Chains of
No.
Mephistopheles is in there, like All Hallows Eve, but there's some really cool cards in there. The Caracases, the Abysses.
Sure.
And you have the
Some
random
cool stuff.
Aisha Tanakas who you never see before or after that set, where it's like, why are you here?
I will be your Yojimbo. I will Yojimbo it so hard.
Look, this is where Nicol Bolas is from originally, which is cool, but it's tough to argue in favor of a set that has bands with others and Rampage as their and world enchantments as their big selling points.
It was, that's one of those, I have a soft spot in my heart because there's so many cards from that set that I enjoy, and it cracks me up big time that exchange program not only existed, but that people sent back mana drains for other cards.
Yeah.
Actually sent in them and said, I don't want these. Give me the other crap cards. I need those.
Right.
Need those. That's just one of those, unique to a Magic type thing.
Yeah.
So, Ruben, what is your number 7?
My number 7 is Legions.
Ooh.
Legions is it just was not fun. It was the only set that was all creatures.
Yeah.
And all of the problems that come with that.
Yeah.
One of the major abilities of the format was morph,
Right.
and so every game was just land, go, land, play a 2/2. And then the game proceeded from there. And draft games were very boring. They were kind of anticlimactic. There were 2 cards in the set. I think it was Whipgrass Entangler and another one that shared very, very similar art. And one of them had morph and one of them didn't. And there's a famous story of Kai actually playing the one that didn't have morph as a morph and losing that game as a result. There was just some very strange things going on in Legions, and it just wasn't enjoyable as an experience. I mean, obviously Mistform Ultimus is, the answer to everybody's trivia questions, but, Amplify was overcosted. Double Strike made its premiere in Legions, but everything that had Double Strike was overcosted. You had like a 4-mana 3/1 and a 6-mana 4/3, and I think those were the two Double Strike creatures.
Right.
It was just not a good set, and it wasn't interesting. It wasn't fun. I don't know. And it had Fugitive Wizard, which is just still one of the stupidest cards that's ever been printed. So that's my pick for number 7.
I didn't have a lot of experience with that set in particular. Aaron, did you get to play with a lot of Legions?
No.
No, me neither. I came in right around the end of Onslaught blocks, so like I kind of when I picked back up, it was the Mirrodin era essentially.
Ooh,
right.
What a good time to come back.
I tried to not play the best deck. Let me tell you, I didn't succeed a lot. It was kind of sad. So my number 7 is, and I don't have Ruben's rule, so just recognize that third sets may happen just like this one. Prophecy is just a stankin' old garbage fire, just a big old whooping like McDonald's boxes like blazing out of this thing. It's just not good. There was nothing great about Prophecy. It was weird anti-rebel stuff. There were like Rhystic magic where you discounted spells that work properly unless a player plays a set amount of mana. There was a weird land theme. There was the avatars. All the cards were pretty terrible, except there was foil, which was another free counter spell. Way to go, Wizards! And there was just nothing great came from Prophecy, and no one goes, man, I wish they'd made sets like Prophecy again because bad.
Yeah, Prophecy would, had I had third sets on my list, Prophecy would be probably higher than 6.
Wow.
It was just so bad. It also suffered a lot from the loss of mana burn, because things like Chimeric Idol, there were lots of, if you have all of your lands tapped, effects, things like Citadel of Pain. So there were a couple of things that, since its printing, also hurt it. But it's just a garbage set. It's just, no one played it. No one liked it. It had the Rhystic stuff, which was all stupid because it made you want to not play spells on your turn so that you could pay for your opponent's Rhystic stuff on their turn, which just isn't good Magic design. It was part of this Mercadian Masks world that no one gave a crap about. And it was just like, just no one cared.
It's a trade world. I don't care. Rosewater knows.
I mean, it was a cool idea, and it just didn't pan out.
Rosewater says it's the second worst design set in Magic.
It's pretty atrocious. I mean, there were all these cards that made you sacrifice lands, and there were all these cards that made you not just sacrifice lands, but keep mana open on your turn, and then keep, the Citadel of Pain, like I mentioned, that made you want to tap all your stuff. It was just so bad. It was just not a good set.
It hurt us. It was bad. And we keep.
You know what the most expensive card from Prophecy is?
What's that?
That would be Rhystic Study.
Wow.
Oh god, that's the bane of my commander group.
It's a common. All of the rares and uncommons are so bad.
Oh my god.
That Rhystic Study is the card.
That's the winner. So let's keep moving on here to number 6. I will tell you right now that I apparently share a number 6, and I will kick it off here. Who else has Cold Snap at number 6? Me and Aaron. Aaron and I know the sadness. So let me set a scene. All right. So around that time, there were still large pre-releases. There was large regional pre-releases in the area, and I had to go to Kentucky to go to the one that I essentially wanted to go to. And so went to the Kentucky Lexington or Louisville Convention Center, whatever it was, entered the room, small batch of players, enter the room, it is quiet, like it is like a morgue in that place. It is just nothing. And like you hear cracking of the packs, right? And you kind of hear like, and this was when they're first, like everybody opened their steel pool, you hear, and then you would hear like, and it was just like everybody. It was weird. Oh my God, it felt like a funeral in there, and no one liked it, and no one wanted to play it out, and you would draft it, and there was people who were just like, stand up, walk out, throw deck in trash can, and leave the room, and it was unbelievable. No one gave a crap about that Merit Lage token that's worth infinite now because everyone hated everything about attending that pre-release.
There weren't ways to cheat around Dark Depths either.
Oh my God, it was painful. Aaron, how does that pain affect you?
So I will say that Cold Snap did one good thing for me, and then it gave me Lightning Storm, which is the win condition for ad nauseum. So shout out to Cold Snap for giving me that.
Still one of the weirdest cards.
It is. Like, at the time, I can imagine how you're like, what am I supposed to do with this? But, the storyline is very strange. It takes place 11 years after in our timeline, people years. It's 11 years after Ice Age was released. That's a really long time to decide that you're going to revisit a plane. Even Ravnica, I think, only had like a 7-year difference between Ravnica and Return to Ravnica. So that's a really long time to go back to something. The storyline is very strange. If I understand it correctly, the plane is sort of going through what they call the thaw. They are shaking off the icy shell from Ice Age, and people are sort of rejoicing at that. But then there's this cabal that like wants to bring it back, and it's like, so that's your threat? It's to make it icy again? Like, it just doesn't. Again? Right, it just doesn't make any sense to me. You have mechanics like recover. And don't get me wrong. I like
what was the one
recursion ability?
The Ripple? It was Ripple, right?
Ripple. When a player plays a spell with Ripple,
oh my
you can
God.
reveal cards from your library and play all the cards revealed with the same name as the card.
No. Oh my God. And it was
mechanics aren't great. The storyline.
Just turn 3, Ripple 2 1s, and then just put 17 2-1s into play.
And they would sit there and go like, we figured out how you can triple draft a small set. And like, no, you didn't. You figured out how to make it stupidly annoying and crazy swingy. Yep. And if you're the one person who's drafting that one card that you get 27 of, then you win the Cold Snap lottery.
Yeah.
And the whole thing that, like, originally when they announced it, they said they found the design file hidden behind a filing cabinet or something.
Right. That was the sale of it. They were like, oh, we found the...
And it was so stupid that people started believing it so hard, they had to come out and say, hey, we didn't get the design file from behind a filing cabinet. That's how bad the set was.
It could be argued looking at some of the cards.
You know what? They should have just ran that so they could have, been like, oh, well, we told you. It's back on the thing. Oh my God. That was rough. But Ruben, what do you got for number 6?
Well, speaking of snow, my number 6 is Cold Snap. Or not Cold Snap. My number 6 is Ice Age. Sorry, you guys were talking about Cold Snap. The original, the OG atrocious snow set. I very specifically remember the only thing about Ice Age that I even cared about was everything that had an Ice Age mana or Ice Age set symbol was just overcosted by a lot. Yep. Like, I just remember looking at like Scaled Worm and being like, why does this cost 8? Like, I don't I'm new to the game. But, like, why is Polar Kraken 100,000 mana? Like, I don't, I'm not the smartest, tool in the shed, but I just don't get the costing on all these cards. And they were, like, super uninspiring. I think that the fact that everything was snow, like, snow is such a weird thing in general. It's very Splice onto Arcane to me in that it doesn't, play well with others.
No.
It's just a weird set, and it had a bunch of like awful stuff going on with it. There were so many spelling mistakes in Ice Age. They accidentally put the old Plains symbol on 2 of the cards. I remember having a playset of the card Philgia.
Oh God!
Which had like a polar bear on it. I don't even remember what it does, but it had the old like wavy sun instead of the new.
Sort of
spiky sun, what I'm talking about?
Oh my God.
I mean, the depletion lands were bad, the scarabs were bad, like the set was just...
That's one of those things that, much like, for example, the movie The Never-Ending Story, as a child, it was amazing and it was unbelievable and my eyes are all glittery, and then as an adult, I'm like, for God's sake, that's the most unwatchable thing I've ever seen, and it hurts me inside.
And the cumulative upkeep was like a thing that people cared about.
But it was the set where I learned Magic.
Sure.
That's it. That's what I got. There's an Icy Manipulator and that super cool Bone Crank, and then you have Jester's Cap, which is an amazing piece of
Lemur was one of the first cards I ever
saw. Blinking Spirit is like your favorite card ever, but even Blinking Spirit, people were like, doesn't this card just by looking at the art, I think this card has flying, and then it just doesn't have flying.
You're right.
Like, there are just so many little things wrong with Ice Age that, Norrit was a common. Go read Norrit and tell me if you should have that in most of your booster packs. Go read that card and tell me what it does and then present it to a brand new player. It's so stupid.
It also brought us the Lurgoyf, Achan's Run.
That's right.
Which is another overcosted card. Like, I get that it's very iconic, and Achan's Run, it's the Lurgoyf, but, like, why does this card cost 8?
This is one of those, and from the design perspective, it was sort of, as I understand it, around the time of Legends, and so they had those two big teams, and one was going to go make Mirage, and one was going to go make Ice Age, and this was Ice Age, and Mirage, they got a little bit more aggressive with things, because Ice Age was, meh.
They just didn't talk to each other?
Oh, and let me tell you, from the limited format, any flyers are insane. Like, 1/1 flyer, OP, like, just get you. Nothing can stop it.
That's why I picked Blinking Spirit, is I thought it had flying.
See? There you go. And there's a Phantasmal Forces or something, like a 4-mana 4/4 you have to pay upkeep on. It's just unbelievably powerful.
Unreasonable.
Crazy good.
Just like every set, every cloud has a silver lining. You got Brainstorm, you got Illusions of Grandeur, you got Incinerate, you got, Pyroclasm,
and you have Necropotence, which...
Obviously, Necropotence, which Scry Magazine said was the worst rare in the set.
It was the worst card in the set.
It was the worst card in the set, yeah.
Yeah, they were like, this card is actual trash, and we don't understand why they made it, and this is weird. And then it went on to completely dominate Magic for years.
Yeah.
Woo! All right, so let's move on here to number 5. Number 5, I'll just kick it off, because I got to stand up for all my homies. Saviors of Kamigawa is my number 5. This set was another one where I had a really awesome and vivid Magic memory. And the memory was, I was at the Saviors pre-release, which wasn't as sparsely attended as Cold Snap. That one was just, that was like a dirge. It was bad. But everybody there, particularly by the time you got to the end of that kind of monster sealed, again, we ran 8 rounds of sealed, huge amount of people, almost 200 people, blah, blah, blah. Well, by the time you got done with that, you could really tell how stupidly busted the hand size matters cards were when they were when they're on your favor and you got them sort of turned on, they're just ridiculous, unstoppable. So that was super fun. And, encouraging you not to play cards, also that's super fun.
Yeah.
Way to go. That was a great one. But here was the memory. So one of my buddies entered a side event and won the side event and won a box of Saviors. And that was cool, right? And we drive home, and it's dark and it's late and everyone's kind of looking at all their packs and opening their stuff. And literally there is no cards but Kataki and Pithing Needle that we cared about at all. Not one. Not a common, not an uncommon, not another rare, nothing except those 2 cards. And when he opened the whole box and didn't get one Pithing Needle because he didn't want to play Kataki, he wouldn't have cared about it. He didn't get one Pithing Needle. He was just so disappointed. We were all like, this is the worst thing ever. And it was just crazy depressing.
Yeah.
Saviors
is pretty depressing. The fact that it also had 2 keywords that were on a grand total of 9 cards is stupid. Epic was on a cycle of 5.
Epic.
There were 4 sweeps.
Sweep. Oh God, sweep.
And then the what they call the wisdom mechanic of never playing spells that you have 7 in your hand.
Right. Why would you want to do that?
Just not good. Not good.
That's crazy. All right, so let's keep moving here. Ruben, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is Torment.
That's the all-black set, or the largely black set?
That is the black set.
Ruben.
It's the second set, the third one being Judgment, which was the green-white set.
Icarid is in Torment, yeah.
Icarid's in Torment. Flashback, Madness, Threshold, all that good stuff. But, it's just such a bad set. It's just... the fact that they tried to sway the color pie in this way was an interesting way to go about looking at the story of Odyssey, but it just didn't pan out. And it was an experiment. Sometimes you make an experiment and the experiment fails, right? It just wasn't good. There were a lot of really good mono black cards in the set. There was Nantuko Shade and Cabal Coffers and the Tainted Lands. Chainer's Edict was in this set.
Chainer's Edict, for sure.
I mean, there were even non-black cards like Circular Logic and Basking Rootwalla that were great in other decks as well. But it just didn't work. Everything depended on you either having a swamp or a black permanent. and so the draft format was super swayed in that way. There was a whole cycle of Punisher spells, which
Oh, those are fun.
Know.
Those are joyous.
We all know those are atrocious. It just wasn't a fun set. It just didn't pan out the way they wanted it to, and I just don't like it.
Gross. Aaron, what is your number 5?
So, Evan, you've been nice enough to sort of share these memories with us that lead to your nominees, and so I'm going to share one with you as well. So, my most treasured card when I was a kid, I don't know if you've ever seen those clear cases that you have to screw the bolts in there you put a little pricey card in there. The card that I was the most proud of when I was a kid was Sliver Queen. I loved everything about Sliver Queen. I had a Slivers deck. I didn't really play in many tournaments because I didn't really know what tournaments were, but when I would play kitchen table Magic with my friends, I was always Sliver Girl. I loved Slivers. And so when I found out that they were going to be bringing Slivers back in Magic 2014, I was really excited because I grew up with Slivers. So imagine my horror when I saw that they all looked like Predator.
Yeah, they're Predator people.
They were bipedal and were basically just people who had bad hair days, and they were not the Slivers that I knew. There was no crystalline sliver. There was no muscle slivers. This was not what I signed up for. And so I think there were a lot of people that were like, you did Slivers dirty. And so because of that one thing, and to be fair, I don't think Magic 2014 had very memorable cards to begin with. So the fact that it wasn't very memorable and the fact that they did Slivers so wrong, it wasn't like you're introducing a new race and you screwed it up. No, you had sets that you could have looked back on and you could have worked with that, I think. And so I just wasn't crazy about what they did, and they're still very bitter about it. And so that is why Magic 2014 is my number 5, because you did Slivers so wrong.
I think they went back and said, like, we're sorry about the Slivers thing. Didn't they come out and be like, yo...
I think they did.
We shouldn't have Predator people, though.
They didn't even affect the board. They just affected your Slivers. And I was like, no, that's not the point. Like, from top to bottom, it was a mess. No.
I understand.
If they didn't actually do that, that's my headcanon.
I recall that they came out and were just like, yeah, we probably shouldn't have Predator them. We're sorry.
Good.
Made them like weird people. No one wanted them to be people. Slivers are not people.
No.
Soylent Green is people, not Slivers.
Huh. Yeah.
Pay attention. All right.
Yeah.
Our number 4 here. Well, let me tell you, my number 4 cannot be named, for it is higher on someone else's list.
Same.
Wow, really?
Wow.
Aaron, what is your number 4?
So my number 4, it's a miracle that this one isn't higher. My number 4 is Avacyn's Restored.
Thank God. If it wasn't Avacyn Restored after the miracle pun, I didn't know what I was going to do with my life.
Yeah.
Miracles! Who thought this was a good idea? Miracles is one of those mechanics where I would love to have been a fly on the wall during that meeting of hearing them rationalize. Totally fine. It's totally fine. Like, no, it's terrible. Avacyn Restored is also the set that brought us Tybalt, who many say is the worst Planeswalker ever made.
Oh, yeah.
So it was really weird. It was set in Innistrad, and it's technically continuing the storyline from Innistrad. But if you look at it mechanically and you look at the theme of it, in a lot of ways it's considered to be almost a reboot of Innistrad. Innistrad and Dark Ascension leaned really hard on the graveyard. It leaned really hard on things like Flashback, and we had the double face cards, and those things are all missing from Avacyn's Restored, which is very strange to just sort of have 2 sets with these things. The third set have none of these things. It leaned more on the humans and sort of what happens when the good guys win. There's a lot of white cards, green cards. Me being a black mage, I didn't really connect with that. The removal was very poor in Limited. And it was also made worse by the fact that Avacyn's Restored was considered to be a standalone set when it came to Limited. And so there were just a number of things wrong with it. I remember it being a pretty painful pre-release. And so that's the reason why it is my number 4 choice.
Avacyn
another
Restored,
one of those.
They were afraid. They were straight. This was a straight fear set. They didn't. They're like, if the double face thing doesn't work out, we're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand the fact that Miracles was a very exciting thing. It's definitely exciting when you don't know if Bonfire's on top, but it's also less unexciting when that thing comes off the top.
Miracle is a gift that has given us a lot of gifts.
Wow.
In terms of Bonfire, in terms of Alex Hayne winning the Pro Tour. I mean, look, there's nothing more exciting than is there a Terminus on top? Like, that's a really exciting thing to watch.
until you realize until you get to Legacy and Vintage, where you can manipulate your deck, and then it's not so miraculous anymore when you plan for it to happen. Yeah,
exactly. And the other, I mean, there's so many bad things about that set. This was another set where the removal was all atrocious and overcosted. The foiling process was bad. Do you guys remember this?
Yeah.
Everyone was complaining about the Avacyn Restored foils. It was just a mess.
And the limited format was just garbage. I swear. I tried to like it. I really did. But Miracles, just like being high variance in standard or constructed or any format, like they were just as high variance in limited. You're like, oh, you got your Thunderous Wrath. Yeah, got your 2 Thunderous Wraths.
Which top aided a Legacy Classic recently.
Yeah, Emma Handy's been running it. Yeah,
that's great.
Avacyn Restored did give us one thing though. It did give us our Lord and Savior Griselbrand.
Griselbrand.
No, and Griselbrand's great. But Griselbrand costs 8, is a 7/7, and draws 7 cards.
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
So fun. The best thing.
So fun story about Griselbrand. I remember being at the Avacyn Restored pre-release and facing somebody who had Griselbrand. And I remember after the match was over, he was trying to make his deck sounds. He's like, yeah, I had these really great interactions, and this really. I was like, okay, you had Griselbrand. I was like, end of story. Like you can chalk it up that you're this beautiful engine and you're a deck building god, but let's be honest, you had Griselbrand. Like you could have picked your nose for 9 rounds and you would have won this thing. Like let's not. And
wow, that was a pretty ridiculous. And Avacyn's worth like $1 million these days, which is fun. All right, so we're gonna move on now to number 3. Number 3 on my list, because I actually get to say this one, is Born of the Gods. Born of the Gods was straight awful. It was seriously, it was Courser of Kruphix and cards that were not Courser of Kruphix. The set, like that was, when Brad and I would review sets and go through every card, there were 2 times when we got done with those things, we were like, wow, this set's bad, isn't it? Yeah, this set's really bad. This was the one. This was the first one. We're like, wow.
Yep.
This is really bad. Actually, it's the second one, but we'll get to that. You just look back and you're like, what does this set have? It just has nothing. Yeah. This is the ultimate middle child syndrome, is this set. It's got one cool rare, or it's got one cool rare in Courser Kruphix, and cards that are not any of those things. Bad mythics, bad cards, bad rares, nothing affected anything. It was just like a weird holdover to Journey into Nyx. It's... this is a nice sort of one to put up on the mantelpiece for why we're never doing these small sets again, because sometimes they're just actual train wrecks, and Born of the Gods for me was just a total train wreck.
Yeah, neither Inspired nor Tribute, which were the 2 keywords that got introduced during the set, were any good or had any lasting impact.
No, it was bad, and it made me feel bad. And so while you had Theros at number 9, Aaron, I can join you now in the block.
I had
number 3.
I had Born of the Gods at number 9. That was one of my earlier picks.
There you go. All right. So Born of the Gods, yes, poopy stains with crap nuggets. And however, Ruben, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is Nemesis. Which is that same Mercadian Masks, Nemesis Prophecy, just atrocious amalgam of garbage. The cards were sold in booster packs that had the art from Sliptide Serpent on it. If you can tell me what Sliptide Serpent does without looking it up, I will give you $1. It was a 7-mana 4/4.
6 mana.
It was a 6-mana 4/4. See, I don't even know what it does.
It's all right.
And then it allowed your opponent to pay mana to block it. I guess I don't even know what it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It's bad.
Atrocious. Did have some tournament impact. Did have Tanglewire. Did have Daze. Lynn Sivvy, of course, banned in block. But it's just bad. It continued the Rebels and Mercenaries thing, which was stupid. It had Fading. This is the set that had Fading in it.
Ooh, Tanglewire.
Yeah, Parallax
Tanglewire, Parallax Tide. It's not good. Also, on another level of bad, this set had Rootwater Thief, which was Mike Long's invitational card. So there you go. Get to live in infamy on that one. It also had Ascendant Evinkar, which, if you didn't know, Ascendant Evinkar represented the same character that was once printed on another card, Krovax.
That's right.
And because Krovax already was on a card, they didn't want to call it Krovax Ascendant Inkar, so they just printed it as Ascendant of Inkar, so that when the set came out, everybody went, is that
that guy looks just like...
you look
guy.
a lot like this guy that I used to know. And then that was a lot of confusion and stupidity. But because the legend rule existed and people were like, can you have the same copy of two different types of legends? Derp, derp, derp. And it was just not a good set, and it was really bad. I had a lot of fun at this pre-release, to be fair, because I drafted a deck that had 2 Saproling bursts in it.
Oh my god.
But this set was not good, and don't go back and try to play it, because it's not good.
I mean, Blastoderm was a thing. Just fine.
Sure.
Accumulated
Blastoderm
knowledge
was
neat. Seal of
Core
Fire
Haven
was
is
cool.
good.
Seal of Fire, Seal of Doom. I mean, that was
The
cool.
Lacalith cycle of red cards were interesting.
Right.
It had a whole bunch of creatures in it that could search your deck for other copies of themselves.
Right.
I mean, there were some good things about the set, like the Spell Shapers. You had like Bola Warrior was in this set. You had a bunch of the cool common Spell Shapers, and those were super neat. It had the Seals cycle. You had Seal of Cleansing, Seal of Removal, etc. So that introduced a bunch of stuff, and it had some free spells in it as well. Massacre, close to Aaron's heart, I'm sure. But look, it's not a good set. Like, just because you got 5 to 10 things that are okay, one days does not a good set make.
You got that right. So let's finish out number 3 here. Aaron, what is your number 3?
So number 3 is a set where I accurately predicted the storyline, which rarely happens. I'm not that gifted of a Vorthos, but I could see where they were going with this a mile away. My number 3 is Dragon's Maze. First off, can we talk about the lack of dragons?
Yeah, right.
Are we just not going to talk about that? Like,
no dragons.
Where were the dragons? There was also the Amara Tandra's Voice of Resurgence controversy, where apparently, I think it was the voice was supposed to be the token.
Right.
Yeah.
But the abilities got switched, where Amara was supposed to do what Voice of Resurgence does, and Voice was supposed to do what she does, and it got switched. So she became a really bad card at that point.
Fuse, for God's sake.
Yeah, I actually predicted the storyline coming a mile away. So are you familiar with the Saw movies?
Yeah.
All right. So Saw 5 had come out right around the time of this one. And spoiler alert, the point of Saw 5, normally the Saw movies are all about killing each other. But the gist of Saw 5 was that you're supposed to work together. Unfortunately, the people don't realize this until they've killed off like half the people in the sewer with them. But when this movie came out, this was right around the time Dragon's Maze came out. And when I saw what they were doing, when I saw like the roster, when I saw like the guild representatives, people around me were like, oh, they're going to fight to the death. This is going to be great. And I was like,
no.
Something tells me that they're going to pull a Saw 5 and make these fools work together, and that's going to be the ending that we get. And sure enough, it turned into this really bizarre device of, like, they work together, and Jace decides to be the guild pact, and it was just like...
I still don't understand.
The living guild pact makes no sense to me.
Right, and it's just like, and the fact that she's not even there, and like, there were so many plot lines that were just unresolved. They really built up this Lazav character of like, we don't know who it is, and it could be someone and it was like, we don't know who it is, and so, the whole like, work together thing was really Barney. I just didn't care about any of the guild representatives. There were so many threads that were left untied. The lack of dragons, the poor card quality. We joke about how much a box costs of Dragon's Maze, and I think the only good thing that came out of it was Evan's Voice of Resurgence token.
I got a sweet token. I got a sick token out of this thing. I mean,
the rest of the set is crap.
Yeah, this was the set where like you could see that Wizards was like, oh my god, nothing in this is good. All the juice goes into Voice of Resurgence. All the juice. Everything else will be fine. We have a sick mythic. They'll buy it because they want the sick mythic. And it was sick. It was as good as advertised. It was as good as it was hyped. It was like, oh, this card's going to see play everywhere. And it saw play everywhere. And that's fantastic. The rest was total garbage. All those stupid legendary creatures, oh my god. For all the guilds, but they were all bad. They're all weird commanders. Like, dude, come on. Give me something. Like, Ral Zarek, that's the best you can do? I mean, like, Notion Thief was super cute. Don't get me wrong, super duper cute. But, like, stuff like Render's Silent, who cares? I mean, just like, it's all right, you can't cast spells anymore, but you paid more than you ever would for a cancel. I mean,
Right.
it was so dumb. I can't handle how bad it felt at the end of the day. And this was again the second set where, after Brad and I finished reviewing it and they turned off the cameras, we were like, "Wow, this set is not very good."
It's
And we're
just
like,
garbage.
"It's
Yeah.
not good."
Yeah.
You know, at the time it was just like we have a feeling it's not that good, and then of course you play it and you're like, "Wow, nothing is positive
Wow,
here.
this is not good.
This
Yeah.
is crap,"
no.
and it makes me feel bad that it's crap. Whew, but we are past that now, which is good because Maze's End, y'all. Remember Maze's End?
I remember Maze's End.
Jesus
I
Christ.
did play Maze's End in Standard briefly, and when you get it to work, it's great. But
Oh, sure.
It's adorable. It's absolutely it's cute as a button, is what that is.
Hey, man, Rorik Thar has seen Legacy sideboard play.
I have Dread Return to Rurik Thar before.
Fair enough. There's your
I played Teysa and
That's
Commander.
exactly-
shiny
I can say
kernel
about it.
in the
I mean,
big
you put
chunky
some Lightning
turd.
Greaves on Teysa, and you have a gay old time. It's just
Wow. So let's move on to number 2. Number 2, Ruben, tell us what your number 2 happens to be.
My number 2, someone has it higher on their list.
Wow. All right.
So,
we'll get to that one soon.
Let's
Aaron,
get to that.
what is your number 2 set?
well. I was told that I have the same as someone. So
yeah,
who-
I have. Mine says same/higher.
So Ruben, are we the same? Do we agree on
We
something?
agree on number 2.
Well, what is
I'll
your
let
number
you start.
2, Aaron?
Okay, so we talk. So Homeland. So I chose Homelands, and when I think about Homelands, there are cards that nostalgia kicks in. I think of cards like Autumn Willow, Baron Sengir is such a name. I think of Grandma Sengir. I think of Aaron the Relentless. I think of Chandler. I think of Abby Gargoyles. But then I also think of cards like Hasdur the Abbot, and I think of just serrated arrows and the power
That's
level.
the only card that I could even think of from that
It's
set.
the only card
Which
that was
this is my
great.
number 2. It's also my number
And
2.
for what it's
So
worth-
the power level is just non-existent. There's a weird sort of, the abilities are all very odd. Like a lot of the abilities are found in colors that don't have them. Like you have flying in green and vigilance and trample in black. And so there's just a lot of disconnects there that don't really make a lot of sense. From what I understand, I did a little bit of research on this. R&D at the time, which included Richard Garfield, didn't even want to print the set. Like they just thought it was so bad that they didn't even want to do it. But apparently they had promised like a couple designers that, hey, you worked on this, your work will see the light of day. And so to keep that promise, they just sort of released the set. And because of that, the developers didn't really put a lot of work into it because they thought it would never see the light of day. Which is a fun little factoid I found out about the set, and frankly, it shows when you see a lot of the cards.
Well, it was, and this is my number 1 worst set for what it's worth, just so I don't have to repeat that. But Homelands was astoundingly terrible. It's to the point where, like, literally its origin story was a couple of dudes in customer service. This is not like game designers they hired to do a thing. This is like, hey, you want to do a magic set? And you're like,
The
"For
janitor."
real?" He was like, yeah, you want to do a magic set? We'll do a magic set. And then they totally did a magic set, and then they freaking printed it, and it's nuts. And I did a whole Forgotten Lore episode on it, and one of the things that's kind of mind blowing was that at the time it was released, with the release or pre-release or whatever, there was a piece that came out, and Wizards was like, yeah, we love the set and we think it's great and it's really thematic and people are going to get into the different types of tribes. Blah, 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 blah. No, Lord, no. And all of the cards looked really, Aaron the Relentless looked so cool. Like,
Yeah.
that was a sweet looking card. Like Ishan Shade looks scary, and Autumn Willow has a really cool ability that no one's ever seen before. Like back in the day, there was some, it was magic cards, new magic cards people were getting excited about, even if the set's crap. You got excited about it, and then slowly, surely, day after day, it just crept in that none of this was good, all of this was bad, and what are they doing to Magic, and is Magic going to live? And then on Aaron's worst of list, the other set that came by and saved Magic, it's fine, whatever, it can be on worst of list, who cares? It's fine.
Honorable mention.
Honorable mention, sorry, yeah, okay.
Yeah, Homelands is just. I literally only can think of serrated arrows. Like there was a short-lived rule for standard play where you had to have 5 cards from each standard legal set in your deck, and basically what everyone did was put 4 serrated arrows in their deck and then 1 of whatever in their sideboard.
Yeah.
That's just what people did.
Home decapped.
Home decapped, exactly
That's right.
And cards like Order of the Ebon Hand were super popular in standard, so it wasn't that much of a home decap.
It was still a fine card, but that's the only one people used.
Exactly. It was the only one people used. It was the only one that anyone would ever want reprinted. # time shifted. Yeah, the set was garbage. I mean, what else can you say about it other than there's nothing interesting or fun when you look at it in comparison to basically any other set.
It was astoundingly...
The flavor is super cool. I do like the world.
The world is neat. Joven's ferrets and all, but...
Yeah, I mean, and also Joven's ferrets. But there's nothing else to say about it.
It's one of those times where, like, you know, I was legitimately worried about the health and future of Magic. It's, you know, when you're there in the card shop buying packs and you want, like, nothing that they have available, and Revised is all sold out, and nobody wants 4th edition, and nobody wants more Ice Age, and nobody wants more of my number 2 of Fallen Empires. Fallen Empires was shockingly bad. Like, Homeland,
that was my number 8.
The Homelands,
my number 4.
The Homelands Fallen Empires 1-2 punch of pain was just like, it's just right in the junk, and then they went back and then they hit you harder in the junk just to see if you could keep standing and keep playing the game, because Fallen Empires was just... It just hurts, man. The packs were all weird because they were small anyway, and so you would get less cards, and even then you wouldn't get anything good, and everything was just straight bad. And it's so hard to even like pinpoint anything. Like, just name anything wrong with a set, and it basically has it. It has too many words. It has bad commons. The theme is really weird. They're trying to do stuff with like homerids.
Can you tell me what's going on with Eben Prater? To this day, I still don't know what's going on.
Something about the bunny, right? That's the bunny one, right?
Oh, that's the bunny one.
Which of the
that's
characters
the bunny
is the
getting
Prater?
married to a dude.
All right, sure, whatever. That's Magic, ladies and gentlemen. That was the 90s. Yep. You know, we had it and it went, but God almighty. Fallen Empires is... I know, let's just say that I know that there's people who've worked at various conventions, like at the booths and stuff, at different Magic booths and stuff for different companies, and one of their games is trying to get people to buy packs of Fallen Empires. Like,
did you know, speaking of packs, did you know that it was an overproduced set?
Yes.
I found out this fun fact. So apparently the cards were available for 4 years, and even after they stopped printing them in 1995, enough cards were printed that they could still be on the shelves for like years afterwards. 15 years later, you can still find booster boxes for roughly the same price that they were when they first came out. Something like 350 to 375 million cards were printed of this set. It didn't sell on time. There was extra cost in terms of housing all these extra cards.
Oh, yeah.
It was considered to be a huge financial loss for Wizards. So not only was it bad in terms of, like you mentioned, Evan, with, you know, the art and the mechanics and things like that, it was also really expensive. It was an expensive failure at that.
Wizards had that problem of super success. They had the problem of, like, everybody wanted everything. You would order 60 boxes of Legends and you would get 6. You know, you would order a ton of whatever the latest set was, and, you know, of Ice Age, you know, you'd order 20 cases and you would get 4. Well, Fallen Empires was the time where they said, you know what? Everything you asked for, we're giving you. Everything. And had the set been amazing, maybe that wouldn't have been a problem. But when they ordered 20 cases of Fallen Empires and 20 cases of Fallen Empires shows up, that's a problem. So, like, that was one of those big sort of points in time where Wizards learned that some scarcity, even if they can put that in the marketplace, some amount of scarcity is often a good thing. Too much scarcity means that people try to over-order, and if you try to meet the over-ordering, well, then it just blows up in your face. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Oh, God, that set was so... Ugh. All right, so we've covered my number 2 and my number 1, coincidentally, with Homelands. However, we're gonna turn the corner to number 1 right here. Aaron, tell us what your number 1 worst set of all time is.
So a lot of these are sets that I personally have played in. You know, Ruben has mentioned a lot of really oldies but goodies. You know, I wasn't really around for Nemesis or Torment or things of that nature, but there was a completely terrible set that I was a part of, and I actually own clothing that has this set written on it because I got to work at PAX during the time when a lot of the spoilers are being released and the big Ulamog was seen coming out of the window and everything looked really optimistic and hopeful. So it feels really weird to have clothing in my closet that bears this awful set on it. My number 1 set is Battle for Zendikar.
This was my number 10.
This was my number 10.
So there were just so many things wrong with this. And you have to understand, I wasn't around for original Zendikar. So, I'd heard a lot of good things about it. I had certainly gone back and looked at Gatherer and seen what I had missed. And, I'd done the flashback drafts, even though I'm not very good at drafting. And I was so looking forward to this. This was my chance to get to experience everything I missed the first time around. And it was nothing like it should have been. And this is something that Morrow actually acknowledges. He wrote an article called Because Salt Makes Mistakes Taste Great, in which he acknowledges missteps like Odyssey block. He mentions Champions of Kamigawa block, but he closes the article off by talking about Battle for Zendikar block and kind of talking about how, they knew that they wanted to go back to Zendikar, and they purposely left out the things that we wanted to go back for, and we got rid of all the adventure tropes, and they just assumed that we wanted to pick up where we left off, which is where the Eldrazi and the Zendikari were fighting. And no, that's not where we wanted to pick up. And so you had a lot of really crazy mechanics. There was a lot going on. You had ingest, you had devoid, you had this processing that was going on. There were so many Eldrazi, a lot of which were broken when you put them together with things like Eldrazi Temple, and things like that. Eye of Ugin, and it was just not what we wanted to, and there was such high hopes for this, and it just failed on every level, and it had really big shoes to fill, and it just ultimately didn't do it.
I mean, it had masterpieces for the first time. The
Which I
expeditions.
feel were just, frankly, I think masterpieces, I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat here, I feel like they were included because they knew the set wasn't very good. And it was, frankly, we know this thing isn't going to sell, we know the cards aren't very good, let's juice it up a little bit. I think it was just a cash grab.
Well, first of all, I think that's true, and I'm glad that they're kind of pulling back on that, because a fifth rarity is a fifth rarity regardless of what's there. And the more you do things that are special, the less special they are. But Battle for Zendikar, in and of itself, was just Rise of the Eldrazi 2.0. And no one wanted to go back to Rise of the Eldrazi. No one wanted this. Like, what we got was the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and what we wanted was, Raiders of the Lost Ark Part 2. We wanted the Last Crusade. We wanted Temple of Doom, and instead we got the Crystal Skull, and we're pissed. And now there's people in refrigerators, surviving nuclear bombs, and it's horrible. And that's what Battle for Zendikar is, which is just a stupidly overpowered planeswalker, like crazy. Now, I know we've been over here complaining about underpowered, and I know it's not easy for Wizards to get that magical point where it's powerful but not overpowered, and it's not it's not going to take over the format, but it's fun to play with. But man, Gideon Ally of Zendikar was stupid from the moment it was printed. It remains stupid as of this recording. I can't wait till it leaves standard. We never talked about it again. This devoid crap was just so bad, and it was the number one, and it felt weird because, like, looking back, and here they are, the salt always makes it taste, better. But what did they do directly after? Shadows of Innistrad into Eldritch Moon. We had more tentacles on things. We didn't want things to be tentacled. We were tired of it. And
what makes it so difficult is he acknowledges in the article that we knew what people wanted and we chose not to give it to you. I could maybe understand if it was like, we didn't know that you guys liked this. We didn't know that this is what you liked about Zendikar. But he actually says, like, we knew this is what we chose to... What does he say? Okay, we chose to return to Zendikar because the original was so popular, but if instead of embracing what made it popular, I embraced the very aspect that we knew was the least popular part about it. Why? Like, what made you think that you could turn that around? What made you think that you could win us over if you know, and we're Magic players, we tend to be kind of negative or kind of critical, that we're really not going to budge on that. And so this isn't a case of like an accident. This isn't a case of not knowing any better. No, you purposely chose to not do the thing we wanted you to do, and that's just unforgivable.
It was just weird. And it's weird because, like, how many stories of Marrows were just like, well, we know people like this, so we're going to give them more of them, and when we gave them more of them, they loved it. They like Commander, we're going to give them Commander like a Soul Ring in every pack. We give them a Soul Ring in every pack for years. Like, and that's fine. Like, it's so strange. They try to frame the narratives in such a weird way sometimes, and like, all those times we did exactly what you guys were hoping, and we made you happy. Well, this time I don't think so, because I don't know, because they wanted to destroy everything and they wanted tentacles everywhere. It was such a letdown. It was huge. By the time you got to Oath, and everything's weird, and the colorless mana symbol, and just no one really cared, and everything was so bad. The limited format was garbage. Oh my god, I hated it. I just hated it. I hated it.
Yeah.
And ladies and gentlemen, I think
There's
that
nothing good to say about it.
wraps up. It's weird.
No, I got my
this type
number
of
one.
list just kind of goes down to just like a sadness nugget, just like right there. It's huge.
I got my number one.
Ruben, what is your number one? Worst set of all time.
I'm just gonna say 2 words, and then I want your honest reaction to those 2 words. Reserve list. Right? Make you throw up in your mouth a little bit. Chronicles.
Chronicles.
Oh.
Wow. The damage that set did. Woo.
Rarely do I see such universal hatred
He went
for
there.
anything,
Yeah.
let alone in Magic.
Straight.
There is not a soul that has anything good to say about Chronicles. I mean, I might have had something good to say about it if they'd actually named it Urza's Private Reserve, which I read on the Wikipedia page that they were thinking about. That was a joke name for it.
Oh, I see.
They were also considering naming it Mosaic or Best of 1994 or Tapestry or Archives. No matter what you call it, a rose is a rose is a rose, and Chronicles is garbage.
Chronicles was so bad because it tried to like put the symbol on there, but it was white bordered. It was weird. It just demolished people.
Down with
It
white
demolished
borders.
people's collections. Just demolished them.
Right. The purpose of Chronicles was, as we were talking earlier, you would order 60 boxes of something and only get 6. And then Magic was like, well, what if we just printed more? And that's how you destroy the Silver Age comics industry. So that's basically what happened with Chronicles, is they printed all these extra cards. They printed, 180 million new cards across, a bunch of languages. Some of them were in like German and French, which was Renaissance, which I guess is the same thing as Chronicles.
Basically.
But I guess slightly more expensive and a slightly different type of inking. But yeah, Chronicles was a horrific response to a problem that Magic thought they had. It just basically what happened was they reprinted a bunch of cards that were expensive of some kind or another, things like Urnum Jin, Nicol Bolas, the Elder Dragons,
right.
And it decimated people's collections.
I mean, Killer Bees used to be like an expensive card.
Right.
Killer Bees used to be like, oh my god, like, do you have a Killer Bees really? Because I can't find them. And now it's like, I got Killer Bees, and the card is terrible.
Right.
And it created the reserve list. It
created it directly as a result of 4th edition and Chronicles. The reserve list came into being, which 20 years later we see as a not great thing. But it's just another, everything that this set touched turned to crap. It was white bordered. It destroyed people's collections. It makes life difficult today. It had a very far-ranging impact. Chronicles is just not. It's just they tried to make it a now that's what I call Magic Cards Volume 1, and it just didn't work. And
love it.
Pretty good.
And it didn't work, and it still makes people mad to this day. It's just a collection of all the things that are wrong.
It was a nice sort of point where like the crescendo of bad decisions just like went and it hit a nice point of, wow, this was really stupid. And the reserve list, like at the beginning, was seen as a good thing. People said, this is, I am now confident in my collection. I can buy and sell these things, and I'm not worried about Wizards doing something stupid. And this was also a result of doing Collector's Edition, which, reprinted in Black Lotus and all this other stuff, and they were in gold borders and square corners, but that didn't matter. The collectors were still pissed off and, like threatening to sue Wizards if they did something like this again, and blah, blah, blah. And so Wizards like, we'll make this thing that says we'll never reprint anything again, and wow, how dumb that ended up being.
Yeah, it was just it just got through everybody to be like, let's not actually print an extension or an expansion.
Right. Let's
just reprint. And it's only 116 cards. That's the other funny thing to me, is it's so small. It should have no impact, and it almost killed Magic.
It was huge. It was absolutely
crazy.
Huge. All right.
So it's Chronicles the number 1 for me.
We're going to turn the corner now to the Day of Judgment, and I think it's weird to be like, your turd is smellier than my turd. That's a strange point to be in our lives.
Yeah.
I think ultimately those who know the sets of us, if we're familiar with the sets, we generally understand why those things were on those lists. Right.
Well, I think it also goes down to, we've all played the game at different points. I think if you were to sort of roll out a timeline of when I was most active playing and Ruben was most active playing, we'd have some differences there and some gaps there. And so I think that, our choices reflect those timelines. And when we were playing, the things we experienced, were I around when Nemesis and Stronghold and all of them are going on, I might have a list that looked more like Ruben's. And were I around during Kamigawa and maybe I enjoyed the playstyles that you did, Evan, maybe my list would look like yours. But, I think it's indicative of when we were playing. I think it's indicative of how we play. And I think that they represent us pretty well individually. I don't think there's anything I really disagreed with. I think I like the dark, though, but again, that's just sort of the black mage in me and going, sort of the dark kind of feels like, or maybe like an early Innistrad almost, again, with the, you have things like Exorcism and Witch Hunter and sort of the, you know what I mean, though, that's those sort of very old-timey,
cool, like, cool sounding stuff.
Scary,
Right.
but conventionally scary, not like aliens and tentacles. And
I don't think that the dark was a failure.
No.
So much as it just was underwhelming.
Yeah. That's a good word for it, yeah.
I was disappointed in it in basically all the ways. Like, it was one of those, the Dark was one of those sets where, like, when I first got into Magic, and this is 4th edition Ice Age type time periods, and I'm like, oh man, what were the old cards? And like Legends had some neat stuff in it or whatever. Arabian Nights had some awesome stuff in it. Antiquity was cool, and then it was like, well, what's this turd? And it's like, good God, there's nothing in there. And even back in the day, I mean, Blood Moon wasn't worth anything. Blood Moon was in Chronicles. It wasn't worth anything. These days, it's ridiculous. It helps, keep a format under check, blah, blah, blah.
Well, it's an 8th edition, so.
Right, it's an 8th edition as well, but like...
And 9th, I guess.
I
Right.
came close to putting 8th edition on here, simply because 8th edition is the reason that we have Ensnaring Bridge in Modern, and Blood Moon in Modern, and Choke in Modern, and the Urza lands, and if we could just get rid of 8th edition...
That's the format's fault.
But
they should ban 8th edition for Modern, but that's a whole discussion
That's
for a whole nother
thing.
show.
But what we have to do here...
I gotta say, I think I had the worst list. Because I I just decided to make a political statement with my list of being like, I'm not putting third sets in my list, and that was kind of, I don't know why I did that, but I think that I like Evans of like, this is markedly, these are the worst, and Aaron's of like, your list was more like which sets had the biggest gap between expectation and reality, which I really liked.
Which was sweet. So, and I liked it, and like Ruben's, at least, I mean, it's nice that, you kind of had your own unique theme, which is why I think your list is a lot more unique than ours. I love seeing stuff like Magic 2014 on yours, Aaron, because I thought that was a thing that I just totally forgot about how stupid that was.
Forgot about it.
Totally forgot how dumb that was, and it was awful, and they should feel bad for that crap. Which was sweet. And also Avacyn Restored is like no one likes that thing.
Basura.
It's just
basura.
All right. But what we want to do is we want to hear from you guys. What did you think? What is on your list? What did we miss? What should we talk about? What aspect did we not touch on? And we will find a magical comment to give a $50 CoolStuffInc.com gift certificate to next week. But before we leave here, I wanted to say thank you, Aaron.
Well, thank you for having me. These are a lot of fun.
Thanks, Ruben.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys are
You're
great.
not garbage.
Thanks, buddy.
Ruben, you're my honorable mention. You're not.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh.
You're higher on my list.
Moving on to
Or
our
the same or higher.
our final slide, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys very much for watching our top 10 worst sets of all time. We do want to hear what you think as we discuss next week. We will have an all-new topic that we will surprise you with. Maybe we'll tell it to you at the next Magic Mics. But I do want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, my co-hosts Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to all the things social that tell people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicescast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, and on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week for another top 10 episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.